It's kind of funny when you think about it, how easy it is to find a community online. You join a few servers, follow a few creators, and maybe eventually start calling yourself a part of that fandom. It's all harmless, am I right? Well, not always, because the deeper you scroll, the more you realize that some communities don't just share hobbies, they share obsessions, and that's where things start to get disturbing. So before you go running off to join a supportive online community, maybe join this one instead by subscribing to the channel. We're a positive and a happy bunch here, at least compared to the ones we are going to talk about. My name is Norki and this is the internet's most disturbing fandoms. One of the most popular genres on YouTube right now is true crime, pulling in millions of views. There is something about exploring the psychology of those monsters, the darkness of human nature that keeps people diving deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole. But when someone starts using these videos as study materials to plan a real crime case, we are officially hit the first red flag. A 27-year-old woman used information from true crime documentaries to plan her alibi, then tried to portray herself as the victim during a trial in a Winchester Crown Court. That's obviously an extreme case, but it shows how blurred the line has become between fascination and fixation. Whether it's a Netflix docuseries, a YouTube deep dive, or endless courtroom footage, people will eat this stuff up no matter how brutal it gets. Now, whatever that's morally right or not is a completely different question you can answer below, but something I found fascinating and honestly disturbing is how a growing number of people, mostly women and girls of all ages, have started to romanticize these monsters.
Each day, the courtroom is filled with spectators drawn by a fascination with Theodore Bundy himself or by the gruesome details of the crimes.
And I'm not talking about a few weird comments or a few letters sent to a prison. I'm talking about an entire fandom built around them. Take Ted Bundy for example, a notorious serial monster who had brutally taken lives of more than 30 people, including a 12-year-old girl. Yet to this day he has fangirls all over the world who claim he shouldn't have died or that he has just been misunderstood.
Every time he turns around, I kind of get that feeling, oh no, he's gonna get me next,
But yet you're fascinated by him.
Very, very. Every night when I go to bed, I just, I get very scared and I shut my door and lock him,
To be perfectly clear here, not every woman interested in true crime is like this, but those who fantasize about these monsters aren't hiding in some obscure corners of the web either, as this is slowly becoming mainstream. Another huge red flag I notice is how Netflix keeps turning these depraved people into movie stars, deliberately casting young and attractive actors to play them. Dahmer, the Menendez brothers, all of them had been portrayed in a sympathetic light to stir up emotion and drive clicks. And now they are doing it once again. Ed Gein, the man who literally made furniture out of human skin, is being played by Charlie Hunnam. Just look at the promo photos, it's clear what they are selling. There were also other actors considered for this role, but they were not appealing enough for the audience. You see where this goes. When you make monsters look good on screen, you're starting justifying them, even if you don't mean to. I've seen fan edits of Dahmers with love songs in the background. Threads where people are writing stuff like he wasn't that bad or he just needed help. Sure, he definitely needed some help, but this doesn't erase what he did. And it's not just a few misunderstood girls. A disturbing number of fans are adult women, writing love letters to these monsters, fantasizing about dating them, and even proposing marriage. There is actually a psychological term for this, hyperstophilia, the phenomenon of being sexually or emotionally attracted to people who have committed extreme and violent crimes. Psychologists say women who fall in this often believe they can fix this man. That behind all these crimes and violence, there is a little broken boy inside of that needs nourishment and heal.
According to one psychiatrist, it is a mixture of fear, intrigue, and in particular, sexual attraction.
And so, yes, I do think this is, in an underlying sense, a sexual attraction, using that word very broadly for the moment. But there is no question but what violence does quicken the pulse of many people, and certainly of young women.
To me, that's just disturbing, and I hope you can see why this isn't a good thing at all. In a few shocking instances, viral fan movements have led to retrials or reduced sentences.
Planning for it for months, and it is finally here. It was a big day. Both brothers were resentenced just a couple hours ago from life in prison without parole to 50 years to life. And the change is a big deal because it makes them eligible for parole under California's youthful...
The Menendez brothers are a perfect example. They saw a way of support decades later after TikTok users reformed them as victims of abuse and innocent boys who just snapped. As the BBC put it, pop culture reinvented the Menendez brothers. Now their fate may rest with one man, but 35 years later, thanks in a part to TikTok, Netflix and stars like Kim Kardashian, the brothers have a new generation of supporters. Many who weren't even born in 1989, the year they ambushed their parents with shotguns in the Beverly Hills mansion. Even music hasn't escaped this strange fashion. Acid Band, a sludge metal band from Louisiana, suddenly started gaining traction again after nearly 30 years apart. Why? Because their debut album featured a painting by a serial killer known as John Wayne Gacy, and people would eventually discover their albums because of the shock value the album cover portrays. And then the curiosity simply does the rest. Now, nearly 3 decades later, Acid Band is touring again, and this time alongside System of a Down. And you see what I'm talking about here. And I actually have 2 videos about this if you're interested. But in a nutshell, that's the scary part. The more we dress up these monsters, the more we make them look tragic, relatable, or even sexy, the easier it becomes to forget what they really did. We are starting humanizing evil, and that can't be a good thing. And as strange as this sounds, that same twisted devotion shows up in other fandoms too. Which brings us to the next one. The furry fandom is one of the most interesting, most misunderstood communities. On the surface, it's a group of adults who devote a huge part of their lives to this subculture, spending small fortunes on these costumes, creating art, and designing their own animal-based characters known as personas. But the truth is a bit more complicated than that. The furry community started as a creative space, and it's one of the first online fandoms to gain real traction. For many, their persona, that animal alter ego, become a way to express themselves in ways they couldn't in real life. As one furry named Fennec put it in an interview, "It's like a superhero game. When I put my fox head on, the person is gone, he doesn't exist. Being in a costume allows me to escape my everyday struggles and do nothing but be happy." Shy people became suddenly confident, others found friends who shared their niche interests, and those who felt trapped into their own identity could finally explore who they really were. And honestly, that's not disturbing at all. Maybe it's a bit weird to outsiders, sure, but not harmful. In a world where people are constantly being judged, the furry fandom gave outsiders a place to belong. But that's the problem. This community built on creativity and escapism started attracting people who saw it as the perfect place to explore desires and fetishes that were not accepted anywhere else. You probably already know where this is heading. As the fandom gained popularity on sites like DeviantArt and for affinity, a darker side began to form. What started as a fantasy art of anthropomorphic animals slowly mixed with explicit adult material, and somehow this innocence this community once had started to erode. Forums that were once safe havens for artists started to be flooded with things like cub art, zoophilia, and even style drivings involving animals. And the problem wasn't just that this content existed, the bigger issue was that many people defended it. If you called it out, you'd be told you were kink shaming, or that it's just drawings. They're not hurting anyone, so why are you bothered? But as time went on, more and more disturbing stories came out of this community. Eventually the public stopped seeing furries as cringe and started seeing them as Something darker, a California man who was convicted of helping to kill 3 people, including the parents of a teen he became obsessed with, after meeting her throughout the furry community, was sentenced to 3 life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. But then came one of the biggest controversies of all. Carol the Wolf, a popular furry YouTuber, was accused of participating in zoophilia acts and sharing disturbing private content online. Leaked chat logs and audio recordings began circulating, and while many details were difficult to verify, the sheer amount of material was horrifying enough, and the damage was done. The internet saw the screenshots and the videos, and for most people they became the entire image of the furry fandom. And while it's true that most furries are harmless people who love art, storytelling and roleplay, the darker side of this fandom is darker than most can imagine. Even conventions started facing issues, adults behaving questionably around children, and they started doing inappropriate meetups disguised as regular gatherings, and even entire events being shut down due to safety concerns. The Midwest Fur Fest gas attack in 2014 was just one of them.
19 people were hospitalized at a furry convention in Illinois.
When chlorine gas was released inside a hotel, it remains one of the most strangest and most chaotic moments in convention history. Dozens were hospitalized and the culprit was never caught. Some believe it was an outsider from the fandom. It feels like when someone puts a costume on, they completely forget about their real life persona and embrace darker desires. That's why the furry fandom is so hard to define. It's not inherently disturbing, but it has corners that reflect the internet at its worst. And that's a pattern we will see again, as the next fandom takes this same idea of comfort and turns it into something far stranger.
It's being called an intentional leak of chlorine gas.
What's a furry?
Sent the hotel guests along with convention attendees into the cold night, many still dressed in their furry costumes.
If you grew up in the 2000s, you probably remember My Little Pony. To your surprise, this was never my thing. I was more of a Dragon Ball / Digimon kid, but that doesn't mean that My Little Pony wasn't popular. Quite the opposite. It was one of those bright, sugary colored cartoons aimed at little girls. The themes were simple: friendship, rainbows and colorful horses. But then something happened that no one could predict it. If you scratch just a bit deeper into the internet, you perhaps stumble upon a fandom called the Bronies. These were mostly adult men who genuinely loved My Little Pony.
I told my mom and she's like, what? Like, I like ponies. She's like, okay.
Brony stands for Bro Ponies, and I know this sounds like a joke, but this quickly became a full-blown online movement. From forum arts, fan art, conventions to original music. It was actually bigger and more organized than most people realized. And to be fair, the show itself wasn't trash. Compared to some of the brain-rot cartoons we are seeing today, My Little Pony has decent writing, relatable characters, and positive messages. After all, the show was made for kids.
Wash their hair, give them a makeover, anything. You could even sometimes...
And over time this show became a escape of reality for some, a symbol of comfort and positivity. And in these early years the Brony fandom was generally wholesome.
Twilight became an alicorn, which is a mix between a Pegasus and a unicorn, and I really felt like the season was over, that we were done. And when they confirmed that we're going to have season 4, I lost it. I was ecstatic.
Conventions were filled with families, artists and fans celebrating that one thing that made them happy. But like every fandom, the bigger it grew, the more cracks it started to show. Because the whole fandom was based on innocence, over time it slowly started to attract people who weren't innocent. And that's exactly what happened here. Because then came the Rule 34. As the old internet saying goes, if it exists, there is porn of it. Around 2013, darker sub-communities started forming inside the Brony fandom. People making not safe for work art and clop videos crossing boundaries on so many levels, it's even hard to describe. What started as harmless fun slowly morphed into weird fetishes, and because these characters were designed for children, it made the whole thing feel very wrong. Fan sites were flooded with this explicit pony art. Even saying this out loud sounds bizarre. But remember when I mentioned original music? One of the most infamous examples was definitely Mando Pony. He was a guy we featured on my worst YouTuber series. where we talk about how he rose to fame with his original My Little Pony inspired songs, pulling in millions of views. For a while he was one of the fandom's biggest names, performing at conventions, and was praised by fans for bringing heart into the community. But behind this image he turned out to be one of the bad ponies in the herd. In 2019, Mando Pony was accused of inappropriate behavior towards underage fans. Messages and testimonies beginning to surface from people he had crossed personal boundaries. He later admitted to some of the allegations, and soon after he disappeared from the internet almost entirely, only dropping a few songs per year.
After speaking to my therapist, psychiatrist and more, I am stepping away from social media and any spotlight. I am not well. I'm seeking help. My family and friends are supporting me until I'm healthy. I wish you all peace and joy. Thank you.
And that moment shattered the illusion that the Brony fandom was just about friendship and music. Because once again the story started to repeat itself. A community built on innocence became the breeding hub for predators. Many of the innocent fans tried to fight back, but at that point the not safe for work material, controversies and criminal cases had spread too far. That's why it shouldn't come as a surprise that over time multiple reports began to surface. Adults in the fandom behaving inappropriately toward minors, grooming them through fan servers, DMs and even conventions, like the BronyCon grooming scandal, where screenshots and testimonies surfaced showing adults using the fandom to approach younger friends in inappropriate ways. One of the darkest incidents tied to the Brony community came from Pennsylvania, where a 34-year-old fan was sentenced to 7 years in a federal prison after being found guilty of possessing illegal material involving minors. Authorities said he collected disturbing and violent imagery, which he had stored and shared online. Cases like this are not rare, but they are permanently damaging how outsiders view the fandom, reminding everyone how easily a community built around innocence can be twisted into something predatory. Some of the victims later came forward to tell their stories, and it completely destroyed what was left of the community's reputation. What makes it even creepier is that My Little Pony was designed to teach empathy, friendship and kindness, yet parts of the fandom were corrupt to its core. I mean, just imagine growing adults being obsessed with a show meant for little girls. It's weird, maybe not criminal in itself, but definitely unsettling. But the next community might even be worse.
You have done illicit there.
To know that I don't do this kind of stuff like with intention to hurt.
That's not the point.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions, Zach. These people are your family. They've helped you through so much. And you took a giant shit on them.
Now let's finish off with one of the most disturbing communities out there. I am sure you know about many other toxic and weird fandoms, so leave a comment for a follow-up video. But this one, it's not really even a fandom, but it behaves like one.
My mom knew about the fetish. She found my diaper stash all throughout the years. Oh god, she was not happy with it.
It has aesthetics, slangs, and a massive online presence. The only difference here is it is built around a kink. DDLG stands for Daddy Dom / Little Girl. It's a kink dynamic where one of the partners takes a dominant caretaker role and the other plays a submissive, emotionally dependent child. You heard that right. Some people claim it's just harmless fantasy, a way to spice things up in the bedroom, but on this channel we try to stay objective and look at things from both sides.
Right now I'm craving children. Like, I really want a child, but I know I can't have that in my life right now, so I have stuffed animals.
Age regression supporters also say it's a coping mechanism, a way to deal with trauma, stress and mental illnesses by regressing into a safer, more innocent versions of themselves.
I am PG, I'm 25 years old, and I'm an adult baby girl. I live this lifestyle 24/7.
If this sounds alarming, it's because it is. The problem is that it rarely stops at wearing diapers or sucking pacifiers. The real issue is when it crosses into not safe for work territory. DDLG, age regression and ABDL, adult baby diaper lover content, have exploded on platforms like TikTok and Tumblr, often without any clear separation between adults and teenage users. And to be clear, DDLG is a troll king. Age regression is not natural, but those two constantly overlap online, creating a dangerous gray zone. In reality, age regression can be something harmless, like grabbing a blanket, drinking hot cocoa, booting up your old PlayStation 1 and playing some Spyro, or just watching some old cartoon on a rainy day. And a way to revisit times where things were a bit simpler. But when age regressions turns into pretending to be a child, wearing diapers, using pacifiers and speaking incoherently, that's the step into the territory I don't think anyone should feel comfortable defending. And the problem is that some of the underage users get pulled into these communities without realizing what they actually are. Like this clear example.
Hey, I'm 14 and I'm in DDLG. I want to be a little. Can I do that? My mom doesn't let me to have a pacifier, even though they help me with my anxiety.
That right there is the problem. Even if age regression isn't the king, age roleplay still is. And adults in these spaces have used this caregiver role to groom younger followers, trying to give them emotional support. They use their positions as parental figures online, offering comfort before slowly taking things into the wrong direction. Their tactics are always the same: creating a safe space, calling themselves non-judgmental, surrounding vulnerable kids with comforting language until things go south. And while the same people online still argue that this is all just harmless roleplay, reality paints a darker picture. Take Pampashu for example, a very infamous YouTuber for documenting his diaper fetish and age regression lifestyle online. For years he posted videos of himself wearing diapers, living in a nursery-themed room. But things take a darker turn when rumors and screenshots began surfacing about inappropriate interactions involving minors. Even within the fetish communities, men started to call him out, saying he crossed serious boundaries.
I just like children. I mean, to do it with me, I mean, they can do it themselves or we can do it side by side, you know?
But once again, we have a community that claimed to be about coping and comfort was hiding something worse. And that's what makes this DDLG and age regression scene so disturbing. It's not just a fetish, it is how it hides behind comfort, trust and vulnerability. But the scariest part is, it's not isolated. The same psychological tactics, building safe spaces, manipulating emotions, are being used by something far bigger. A group that learned how to weaponize vulnerability on a massive scale. Organization 764. They lure lonely and broken people, and on the surface it looks like support. In reality, it is just a way to exploit you. And that dependency of discomfort is exactly what 764 preys on. And I would say that some of these communities are chasing the same pattern. And if you thought that these fandoms were disturbing, what 764 is doing makes them look innocent.